Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Kiri Sinclair, who is the founder of Sinclair Communications. So please welcome Kiri to speak to us about her experiences with curiosity.
So good morning. At the end of the aisles there, you're going to see some paper and some Faber-Castell pencils there. If you could just grab those and pass the pencils and paper around. And I just want you to take a think about, what is it since you've woken up this morning that's made you want to know more about it? What's made you inquisitive today? So while I'm talking, just write down or draw a big word so that I can see it at the end of the presentation, so I can read out some of the thoughts that you've had. I always think people think better when they have a paper and pencil in their hands, so I thought I'd help out on that. So hello, it's nice to meet you. I'm Kiri Sinclair. I'm the founder of Sinclair, which is an integrated PR agency here in Hong Kong and Shanghai. I'm also the chairperson of the Council of Public Relations Firms in Hong Kong. I'm a Hong Konger, born and raised and schooled. I like to read, I like to eat, hike, I love to travel. I live with 3 cats. They rescued me. Their names are George, Alice, and Henry. And I'm passionate about nurturing curiosity. And luckily, that's what we're here to talk about today. So what does curiosity mean to me? Constantly seeking knowledge, understanding, meaning, and connection. To me, curiosity is a journey. It's not a moment in time, it's not a fleeting thought, it's not sometimes, it's all the time. It's something inside you that makes you want to learn more, that makes you want to grow as a person, to learn about other people, to understand other people's needs. Who here thinks that they're a curious person? Who doesn't? Maybe one. Maybe that was a half. It wasn't a fully raised. Curiosity is not meddling, interfering, prying, being nosy, peeping. And I always think it's important that when we're talking about a definition, that we show the boundaries of our definition. And the difference is in the intention. So why is nurturing curiosity so important? Imagine what your life would be like if you were not a curious person. Imagine living in a community or a society where people were uninterested, indifferent, dispassionate, apathetic, unconcerned. Imagine that. Curious people reimagine our world. They think of things differently, and that means they see things differently. And through that, they discover the new. They're innovators. They want to know why things work, how things work, and they drive innovation in all parts of our society. And through innovation, we drive change. Curious people tend to be change makers. They're open to new ideas. They accept change, but also they make change happen. And why do they do that? Is because they want to understand. Curious people tend to connect with others. They ask the right questions, and they want to find the solutions. They're interested in other people's lives. And that's how curiosity powers creativity. In today's world especially, where so much information is delivered to us whether we like it or not, I think having a conversation about curiosity is so important. So curiosity encourages us to reach outside of our own social bubble, to ask the right kinds of questions, and to understand different perspectives. So as we sit there on our phone in a world where there's all this fake news and there's all this information being delivered to us all the time, it's our job as curious people not to just receive information, but to go and seek it. To ask why someone created that information or that content. What was their intention? Is it true? Where did it come from? What's the meaning? What's the thinking behind it? That's the job of curious people, not to just accept everything that we see or that we're given, everything that we read or that we share. It's to question it, to think about it, to see what it means to us, what it might mean to other people. So at Creative Mornings, we're asked to talk about our personal journeys within a conversation. And so curiosity is something that has been with me from a very young age. I've earned a few interesting names along the way. My Australian friends would call me Sticky Beak, an inquisitive person. My American friends, Curious George. And here you see that connection of curiosity and trouble. Curiosity is bad. And my British friends perhaps just say, she's curious. Strange, odd, unusual. And you know, over the years, I've grown okay with that. I was taught to be curious. My father, my mother. My father, Kevin Sinclair, was a journalist here in Hong Kong for 40 years. So he got on a ship, probably a plane, but he says a ship, from New Zealand to Australia, and then came to Hong Kong to join a newspaper. He was editor of the SCMP in the 70s. And what he taught me was about storytelling. It was about finding the story behind the story, then finding the fact behind the story. So getting to the bottom of what's really going on, asking the right questions. In the last 10 years of his life, he had a column in SCMP just called Kevin Sinclair's Hong Kong. So he was such a curious type of person that other people were curious about what he was curious about. And they gave him a column twice a week to just write about whatever was on his mind. With him, we traveled the world. And with that, every wonderful family holiday we went on was in search of a story. So I've been to some amazing places. And in those amazing places, we didn't go to the tourist destinations. We went to interview someone, or went to the factories, or the workplaces or such, to really find out what was going on behind the culture of the people who lived there. So I've been to some of the most incredible places in the world and still not been to the tourism attractions. My mother, Dr. Kit Sinclair. Her curiosity found her as an American joined the Peace Corps. She went to South Korea, where she was stationed for 3 years before she arrived in Hong Kong in the late 60s. That's where she met the man. They stayed, I became. Dr. Sinclair is an occupational therapist. She taught at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University for almost 40 years. Am I making the age here? Sorry. She is in the room. And what she's done with her life is very much about going out to different communities around the world and helping, especially in the last few years, with disaster relief. So going into communities where something terrible has happened, where the Red Cross or other NGOs have gone in to assist at that first stage. But what happens next? Who looks after those communities and helps them to rebuild? So Mum goes out and she teaches the teachers to teach the students to get out into those communities. And what I learned from her was to be curious about people, to find out what the story behind someone's issues, behind their problems, to help find solutions. This picture here is a picture from just after the Chengdu Earthquake way back when. And here you'll see Mum, she was stationed up in Chengdu for a number of weeks, perhaps months, working with the Red Cross there to help them to be able to enable communities to regrow. So my curiosity has actually led me on many adventures, some of which I can share with you. I've traveled the world. This picture actually, although it says China, was in Indonesia, I'm told, in the early 80s. You'll see my dress sense hasn't changed that much. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of interesting people. And here I could have put a picture of a face that all of you would have known from all the famous people in the world that I have the opportunity to meet, both through my upbringing but also through my job now. But actually sometimes it's the ones whose names you don't remember that hold the strongest part in your life. The ones that taught you to perhaps just be calm for a moment. My curiosity brought me to study. I did an MBA at HKU just for fun. My friends thought I was mad. And at the same time as doing that, I started an agency. Why? Why did I go out and start an agency? Again, curiosity. I love to work with people, with companies, with brands, with governments that are trying to change the world, even in small ways. And through their passion, it drives my passion. And through their work, I get to learn different things. So if I think about the clients that we have now, they range from travel and tourism boards, resorts, spas, and so forth. Education, SCAD, for example. We work with brands that are in the B2B or corporate spaces. We work with consumer brands. Through all of this, each time we get a new client, I get to investigate. I get to learn something new. You know, when we work with architecture, I get to understand how a building is built. Interior designers teach me why they put things in certain places. And I get to get these skills just through my everyday job. And that itself is just a dream. So with that curiosity, I make it a point of passing it on to my team. I bring my curiosity to work with me. And I think that that's a really important thing to share. So I'm very passionate about nurturing curiosity. And I think that it's one of those traits that you're not just born with. It's something that you're taught, that's nurtured, that's cultivated in communities. So I often think that we go to talks and people tell you how to do something. And that doesn't help me very much. What helps me is when people tell me how they did it. So I'm going to talk about how I nurture my own curiosity. Curiosity in my workplace and curiosity in society, and give you some examples of how I've done that. Nurturing my own curiosity. It's okay if I don't know the answer. And it took me a long time to learn that saying, I don't know, is allowed. To get over the fear of looking stupid or uneducated or uncurious. But actually what I've learned is that by being able to say, I don't know the answer, I'm firstly allowing someone else to inform me, starting a conversation. I'm creating an opportunity for myself to go out and find an answer. It's okay to say I don't know. I listen to people. Really listen to people. Hear what they're saying and try and understand the meaning behind what they didn't say without judgment. I make time to think. In fact, I schedule time to think. And to me, being able to think means putting down the phone, putting all your contraptions away and just letting your mind wander to move outside of the space that it gets stuck in with your day-to-day. We will have a schedule, we will have our social media apps going in front of our faces, our emails driving us. But if we put that all away and clear our minds, what's there? So instead of sitting in the back of a bus and checking your phone to see what other people are pretending to be doing. Look out the window and have a think about what the guy walking down the street is doing, how his day was, or how that light bulb was made, or how that building got built, or why the road is broken. And let your mind do its work. I force myself to do new things. I think it's very easy to get into a routine, and it's very easy to get busy and then get tired and then just want to sleep, or just do things that you know how to do. But I have to remind myself that you can forget how to be an explorer. You have to practice exploring. And I meditate. It clears my mind of all the clutter. So fostering curiosity in the workplace. Each one of us, no matter what level in an organization, can be fostering our colleagues' curiosity. So at Sinclair, we create a culture where questions are more important than answers, where there is no stupid question. We encourage our team to ask why, because when they ask why, they learn how. We find opportunities for our team to connect with other communities. We do things to push people's boundaries. We encourage surprises and the unexpected. And we enable voices from all levels, from all sides of the office, and we listen to ideas and perspectives. And that's what makes us a strong agency, because we're not single or narrow-minded. So here are some of the ways that we do that, a few examples. One thing that we've done for a long time is our Work for Good program, where we give a significant amount of time to pro bono work within the community. A project we've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years is the Great Chefs of Hong Kong on behalf of Hip Hong Society. So Hip Hong Society helps children with autism and their families. What we do with them is every year we do an event called the Great Chefs, where 40 or more chefs from different restaurants around Hong Kong make one dish. We all gather in the ballroom of the Grand Hyatt, and people come in and buy a ticket to enjoy the night. What this allows for the team, my teammates, is for them to go in and meet different people they wouldn't have the opportunity to perhaps encounter otherwise. Meet families that have different issues than what they have. Meet the chefs. Meet some of the celebrities that help us along with the journey. We get to know new people, understand new issues. Something that we've been working a lot on over the last year is creating conversation about the refugee issues in Hong Kong. One project we did, I think it was late last year, was with the Center for Refugees. So here we had a photo exhibition where we showed imagery of Hong Kong's history as being a place of refuge, reminding Hong Kong that so many of us came to Hong Kong seeking freedom, opportunity, and reminding us what role that we've played over the years. These pictures here are of the 80s of the Vietnamese camps, for example. And through doing this, we then get people together to talk about the issue and what it means to them. And perhaps that leads them into thinking about what we should be doing now. For our team, it means that they get to work with past refugees, current refugees. They get to go out and talk to different brands about why this is such an important issue. Perhaps it was an issue that they'd never thought about before. Meeting people that they hadn't encountered before. They didn't understand the meaning of what it meant to have absolutely nothing, not even a country. Another project that we work on is with Justice Centre. Justice Center offers legal and psychological support for refugees currently in Hong Kong. If you'd like to know more about the refugee situation in Hong Kong, do ask. I could go on for hours. But this project, we did an art competition called Hong Kong Human Rights Arts Prize. We opened this prize up to artists in Hong Kong for them to show their thinking around human rights issues. By doing this, the artist is creating a new piece of work, so we're getting them thinking about human rights. They're then sharing that with a wider community, and then that community is going out and talking about it. Again, this is an opportunity to share a message about human rights, but it's an opportunity for our team members to understand issues. Again, it's about getting outside of the social bubble that you live in. We also have a monthly team activity. Now, in our team, we have people of all backgrounds, all sorts of hobbies that they have, all sorts of interests. And so for some people, doing an art class at Chinese New Year and drawing flowers, this was a number of years ago, is a delight. And to others, it's absolutely mortifying. I'm one of the mortified ones. But being able to go as a team and face our fears, being able to go and work together to learn a new skill. The wonderful lady who was teaching us on this day is still a friend that I met that day. You know, it's fun to be able to get out with people. And I think it really enriches lives. Here you can see a picture of the team doing, I think it's called Zenku, which is a form of drawing meditation, and another one of us making mooncakes. And then there's the sporty side. A really good way to deal with aggression and feelings of hatred towards your colleagues is going out and playing a little bit of bubble soccer. Another thing that we do is that we discuss within our teams what makes us tick. What are we interested in? What are we not interested in? What do we stand for? Because I can stand here and tell a client what I think my agency stands for, but if my colleagues don't think the same way, it's not going to work out very well, is it? So by having open and honest dialogue within the team, we're able to align together to see where we want to go in the future. And by doing things like this, we're able to see where we're really at and to get the team to get curious about what they're doing with their lives, what they want to be doing with their lives. So moving on to curiosity and society. And I forgot to have a time check, so I'm sure someone will shut me up when it's time. I think it's really important for me to get involved in activities that allow me to understand other people. And also to try not to be afraid to be vulnerable so that other people can understand me. We've worked on many projects over the last few years where we're trying to arouse curiosity within Hong Kong's community. One project was last year on sharks and humanity. And a nod here to George Wong, who passed away late last year. On Sharks and Humanity was a project that brought together 36 artists to create art around sharks. It was held in the outside space outside Star Ferry and inside the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. And what it did was it encouraged people to look at the artwork, to be interested in it, to approach it. And through doing that, they were able to see that we were talking about the shark's fin trade. And as it says here, when the buying stops, the killing can too. And so through projects like this, we draw people in to be curious about a new topic, to drive change in society. Some of you who have been in Hong Kong a few years will remember Event Horizon. This is a project that we drove with Anthony Gormley. This project saw 27 life-size naked sculptures on rooftops and 4 on the street level around Hong Kong. Who here saw this project? Do you remember? So you'll remember that when it first went up, the immediate reaction was shock, almost horror. It brought up taboos in Hong Kong that are not often spoken about. Nudity, suicide. The objective of Event Horizon was to make people think about their urban environment in a different way, to make them stop, and our call to action was, look up. And people did look up. And over the 6 months that it was in Hong Kong, that shock led to engagement and then changed into people accepting and understanding. So over a 6-month period, and we can track this in the news articles, we can track this in the online engagement that happened around this project, we saw people change. We saw their curiosity bring them into conversations, change their mindsets about public art, art in society, about suicide. With a project like this, we reached out to, before it was launched, many NGOs in Hong Kong to tell them how they could use this as a tool to teach about the negative aspects of suicide, not only for themselves, obviously, but also for the community at large and their families. And yesterday, we launched Harbour Art Sculpture Park. So down in the Central and Western District Promenade in Wan Chai, so if you go from Star Ferry and walk towards the Hong Kong Cultural Centre and back to Hong Kong Art Centre, you'll now see sculptures on our harbour front. These sculptures are by 19 artists that are both renowned and emerging, local and international. This is the largest international sculpture park that Hong Kong has ever seen, and one of the largest public art programs that Hong Kong has ever seen, and is also the reason I'm extremely tired today. Inviting the wider community to take part in the art conversation and reflect on art's place in society. And this being an event for creative communities, you'll probably all have an understanding of why art in public places is so important, of why being able to bring art to everyone in society is so important. Here in Hong Kong, especially next month, in the month of March, we celebrate Art Month. Art Basel, Art Central, the 2 art fairs. There's then a huge amount of activity happening around the city, and most of it is exclusive. So here we stand and say that in the month of March, Hong Kong is an art city for the few. So we wanted to change that. And by bringing public art into a wider community, we're inviting people to be part of that conversation. We're also inviting them to see the world in a different way. To have a think about, why did some Japanese lady decide to do a pumpkin with spots on it? What's the meaning behind the pitchfork, the feet? This is Michael Craig Martin here with his pitchfork. He was here yesterday. These photos were taken yesterday. This is Matthew Zheng, a local artist here, and one of the most amazing works that I've seen. This is made of charcoal. On the outside, I should say. Obviously not all the way through, it wouldn't stand for long. This is a bronze. And here we have Casey Wong, local artist. In the middle here is Anthony Gormley. I've forgotten who did the gold nuggets, but I do love them. This is transforming our harbour front as we speak. Fortunately, the sun is out today. It's a much better day to see it than it was yesterday in the rain. And I do encourage you all to become a part of this conversation. Again, this is a project that we do because it's important for the community. And Sinclair is a sponsor and a partner of this program. Why? Because it gets Hong Kong curious. And if we can create a community of curious people, and if we can use curiosity to bring people closer together, we can change the worlds we live in. So on ending, curiosity breeds discovery, innovation, creativity. And we should not only be curious and encourage it. We should strive to cultivate it in ourselves and in others, because the greatest minds are curious minds. And on a final thought, thank you.
Can everyone hear me if I stand from here? No? Can everyone hear me now? Okay, good, so I don't need to be really close and so you feel like I'm beatboxing or something. Okay. So thank you so much, Kiri. Let's open it to questions. Anyone?
Thank you. As a curious person myself, I find that my curiosity is often stagnated by my respect for other people's privacy, and as you said before, I feel like a sticky beak. Have you ever felt that way in terms of when you're meeting someone or within your work or with your colleagues where you've been curious but I don't want to ask that question, or I should respect that person's privacy, but I really want to know what's going on?
I think it's really important to respect your own boundaries and other people's boundaries. But luckily, my job is to ask questions. So if I'm in a room with a client, it's my job to know if there's an issue. It's my job to ask them the sticky questions so that should something arise from that, I'm aware and able to deal with the crisis. I think that within my friendship groups, my friends are used to me wanting to know, and they know when to tell me to back off. But I do think that it's important when I'm talking with people who are not a client, not a friend, and perhaps someone I've just met, that I understand and respect their boundaries and know when it's right to ask the right question and when it's right to just not ask. And I think that having respect for people is just so important, but also not to let that kind of overrun the desire to be curious, because sometimes people want to be asked the question, not the just, how are you today, are you okay? But what's on your mind? Can I help?
What are some of your favorite questions to ask people that get responses or help you foster that curiosity in them?
That's a fantastic question. Being in PR, I spend a lot of time around people, having to host people, whether they're journalists, whether they're Instagrammers, whether they're clients or CEOs. And so making conversation is something I often have to do. And I always start close to home, family, where have you traveled recently? But I also have the opportunity to work with a lot of people within creative fields that are the best in the business. And asking about their family isn't what I want to know. What I want to know is, how did you come up with that idea? Where did that come from? Well, tell me where you were when it first popped into your mind. What were you doing? Who were you with? How did that work out? And I think that I come across as, I like to call it passionate. Other people might call it overeager. But I want to know, and so I ask. And I know that other people have their own boundaries. And when people don't want to answer a question, they'll divert it. They'll move away. You can tell by someone's And that's what part of listening is being able to not only hear what they're saying, but if someone's kind of moving away, it's like, okay, they don't want to answer that, let's move on.
There was a question here.
Hi Kiri, here's Tulo, and I want to ask you, how did you come up with the idea to create these sculptures? Because I really want to know how you come up with this idea. What is your purpose to do this for this country and city?
I'm a Hong Konger. I have a New Zealand father and American mother. But in my heart, I'm purely Hong Kong. And the Hong Kong that I was born into was a very different Hong Kong than the one we stand in today. And I think that it's up to all of us to play a part in the development of our communities, whether they be your very local communities, your workplace, the company you work for, the district you live in, or whether it be the whole society. To me, I think that I truly believe that everyone has the ability to change the world. And sometimes that change is just the smallest of things. Sometimes it's just putting a white horse on the harbour front. We did that yesterday. So that people can just be inspired to become an artist. You know, there's a kid that's going to walk into that park over the next few weeks, and it's going to change their life. Just that one kid, right? And if that is the only thing that is achieved by this, that is change. Because what if that one kid becomes, right? And I think that we all have the ability to be a positive force. Whatever it is that your passion is in, just become part of a community until you're leading the community. My passion is very much in public art. I don't come from an art background. I come purely from an economics and business and PR and communications background. But what I find about art, and if everyone just looks up here at this wonderful horse who I've been speaking to, is it inspires you to think about things differently. And within communities where people have so many issues that they're dealing with, whether it be issues in their own household, whether it be issues at work, being able to bring a different perspective is so, so important.
Does that answer your question?
Hi, Kiri. Thanks. Actually, I've worked for your company on quite a few occasions. Her company is awesome to work with, by the way. Company culture is totally respectable. I got a lot to learn from them. Thank you. I just want to ask, when you're encouraging curiosity, what's one of the, or a few of the biggest challenges that you've came across?
So I run businesses here in Hong Kong and in Shanghai. And what we find is that kids who grew up in the Hong Kong school system tend to have been taught that curiosity and asking questions was not a good thing. And you put that to people who've been brought up in a more American, Australian, British education system, where people are taught to be creative, to have playtime, to ask questions without putting their hands up. You put those two cultures together, and what you get is some really loud people and some really quiet people. And so I've learned tricks to kind of overcome that. So, if you're a room full of loudmouth Westerners, let's say, I'm one of those sometimes, just sometimes, everyone will just brainstorm. They'll just shout things out. But when you have a room that is of mixed cultures and people have been brought up differently, you've got to find other ways. And so when I do a brainstorming like that, we have paper and pencils out. And we ask people to kind of write down their top 3 ideas and throw it into the middle. And so that no one is sticking their head up about the crowd. And it doesn't matter whose idea it was, it's an idea that we can all discuss, right? There's other ways with brainstorming as well, as just kind of asking people to go around the table one by one to come up with another idea and keep going, like that old drinking game, without the drinking, just the coffee. But to kind of keep going until all of the ideas are out there, we've got them all down, and then we start to kind of pull them apart and stick them back together. it's important that we overcome our fears and that we learn from each other. And I think that there's something to be learnt from having respect for other people's opinions and not just shouting out, oh, I disagree, or that's wrong, which I tend to find that people that were brought up in Western communities do. On the other hand, people brought up in Asia tend to be a little bit more quiet, but they learn to speak up. And so we create that balance within a multicultural organization. And I think that people just learn these wonderful different traits from each other.
Thank you.
Very good. So I'm not sure if have you been working besides NGO or arts organizations, have you been working with commercial companies because they have a deadline or somehow they are quite critical if you guys did not able to deliver the results and bring the outcome. So how can you handle that? Because there's deadline and your creative juice or your wonderment juice cannot be flowing. How can you address that?
Clients and deadlines. Yep, that's agency work. About 15% of the work that we do is in the areas of the arts. It's what we're known for because it's what's public. The majority of the work we do is a bit more behind the scenes. So when we're working with, we work with some of the biggest brands internationally in Hong Kong and in China. Everything from Alibaba to Swire Properties to Tourism Australia to Singapore Tourism Board to the Faber-Castell pencils that you see around the tables today. We do a lot of e-commerce, which is very time-orientated, through to doing corporate projects where the goal is to amplify a brand's awareness. So there isn't a today result, but over the year you need to see a result. Working to deadlines is a skill. It often requires only 3 hours sleep, which is what I got last night. But when you're passionate about something, that's okay. I think that working with clients and working with deadlines is very much about understanding expectations and understanding measurement. You need to understand what your client expects. And it's not just the client who says, oh, I want to have a certain number of articles in this kind of digital, digital publication, or whether it's, I want to have certain influencers share this kind of content or something like that, right? They also have expectations behind the expectations. So we work with people who would never say, I want to be on the top cover of Tatler, but that actually they just want to be on the cover of Tatler, right? It's so important to not only understand the expectation that's there on the paper, but the expectation that's really going to make the client happy. So that's one side. But the other side of expectation is measurement. So how do you measure your success? And before we start a project, we have to agree on what that measurement is. How are we going to measure it? Because the way that you measure any form of work that you do changes in different people's mindsets, right? So it might be that we embark on a project and we think we understand each other, and I'm heading here and they want us to head here. It's not going to work out very well. So if you, at the very beginning, map out what the very end looks like. So sometimes I'll say to a client, okay, so if we made the front page of the New York Times, what would you want the headline to say? Oh. And that makes them think of it differently, right? So it's setting the boundaries of your work. But I also believe very strongly in a work-life balance. And I do think that people who spend all their life at an office behind a computer are not creative. They're not giving themselves time for curiosity. And actually, they become less productive. And I think that there's a misconception that agency work is very much about just at your desk all hours of the day, at the beck and call of your clients. You are allowed to put your phone on silent. You are allowed to ignore it overnight.
So that's yours.
We have time for one last question. Anyone?
Thanks a lot for your sharing today. And really great to see the work that you're doing in public art, because Hong Kong is a place that needs more art in the community. So my question is, it's definitely not something that you can push forward alone, and you need partners to work with you to make it happen. So in your case, how did you identify like-minded partners to bring these projects to fruition?
I'm really glad you asked that question, and I'm going to take you away from my lovely cats. But just so that you know, George is in the middle, Henry's black, and Alice is with the shoe. So projects like this one, Harbour Art Sculpture Park, for example, has over 70 stakeholders. 70 stakeholders. So if you think about the artist whose work it is, the gallery who allowed that work to be part of the exhibition and also brought it over, the agency, ourselves, who do all the communications, create the websites, all of that, Icicle, the design company that helped us to create all the visual aspects of the project, and then you think about the art insurers, the shipping people, the sponsors that come on board, so Henderson Land, for example, the government agencies and non-government agencies that have come on board. So Hong Kong Art Centre came on board to be a presenter. The Hong Kong Art Development Council came on board with a matching fund so that we could help to develop Hong Kong artists. Jockey Club Education Trust Centre, I think it is, Trust Club, Community, something, I'll think of that in a minute. So the Jockey Club came on board, and they are funding the entire education project that goes behind this project, right? And Leisure and Cultural Services Department gave us some of the land, Tamar Park area and such. So just going back to Jockey Club then funds an education program. Part of that program is a seminar. There's a seminar all day tomorrow, and it's free to sign up, so feel free to do that. You can go to the website. But they also, we've created education packs that go out to 1,600 schools in Hong Kong that teach the teacher how to use this exhibition in classrooms in Hong Kong to make it useful to Hong Kong people, right? And there are many, many other aspects of the education outreach that goes there. And so all of the institutions that have partnered with this project to make it happen. How does that happen? We go out and knock on doors. We come up with an idea. This idea was initiated by a company called Art Partners. Art Partners came up with the idea. We talked about how we'd get it done, and between us, we went out and we knocked on some doors. We asked people for money, for support, for artwork, to be a speaker, to be a curator, to be part of. And I think that when you have the passion and you present passion to people, other people will jump on board. You don't have to know what you're doing. You just have to be passionate about it. You'll learn along the way.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much, Kiri.
Thank you all so much. Can I just ask one last thing? Did anyone write or draw me anything? Share and share alike? Do you just want to shout them out? People, excellent. Looking up, the world. What are we curious about today? Something new for lunch. I'm in. Bus safety, SCAD. Social interaction. Sitting in a courtroom. Expansion of the mind and soul. My future. Thank you, everyone.